In June 2025, a young woman named Sonali and her boyfriend Nishant took a midnight drive near the Chaambi mountain road in Himachal Pradesh. The locals avoid this specific stretch. It sits near an old cremation ground, and years earlier, the body of a murdered girl was thrown into the deep ravine right below the asphalt. Nishant parked the car near the edge to talk. As they sat in the quiet dark, he leaned over and hugged Sonali. But at that exact same millisecond, she felt someone else hug her from behind. It was freezing cold, incredibly heavy, and completely unnatural. Terrified, she stared out the window toward the steep incline opposite the car. A glowing white child, maybe 3 years old, was slowly climbing up the dark mountain slope. Within seconds, the toddler completely vanished into the night. Sonali begged Nishant to drive away. He moved the car further down the road and stopped again. Sonali slowly checked the rearview mirror inside the cabin. Sitting directly in the back seat was a terrifying man. Half of his face looked burned, one eye was entirely missing, and he was staring right at her with a menacing smile. She screamed and scrambled outside the car, violently vomiting into the dirt. On the third heave, she watched in horror as a strange, thick, jelly-like substance poured out of her mouth. Nishant got out to help, but his movements were strange, jerky, and unnatural. He looked at her and angrily asked, "You forgot Shubham so easily?" Hearing that name caused Sonali to faint on the spot. The secret she had carried since high school had finally clawed its way into the physical world, turning a mountain drive into a supernatural battleground between a protective child and a demonic parasite. The seeds of this haunting were planted 5 years earlier in a nearby village. Sonali had grown up in these hills, building her life entirely around Nishant. But when he left for army training, the silence of the village became a weight she couldn't carry. She stopped speaking. She stopped attending her college classes. When her family discovered her truancy, their reaction was swift and severe. They completely stripped away her phone and her freedom, locking her in a world of absolute forced isolation. Inside that room, the loneliness was more than just a mood. It felt physical. The grief and isolation acted like a slow erosion, wearing down the natural barrier that usually keeps the darkness at bay. She was becoming fractured. Those fractures rippled outward into the night, signaling to wandering, malicious things that a host was ready. A spiritual gateway had been left completely unguarded. Sonali didn't know it, but during a routine evening walk, the burned man had finally seen the opening. He didn't just follow her home, he attached himself to her, hiding in the cold corners of her room. The entity soon began making its presence known. One evening, Sonali heard heavy, deliberate footsteps stomping up the stairs. She and her mother rushed to the rooftop, only to see a dark shadow vaulting over the edge and disappearing into the night.
The manifestations grew bolder. The following night, Sonali's mother froze when she saw a young man standing perfectly still behind the bathroom grill. His neck was violently twisted to the side, and he stared at her with dead eyes before retreating into the bushes. Sonali and her aunt ran outside to confront him. As they cornered the boy near the house, he didn't run into the woods. He simply stepped backward and sank straight into the solid brick wall as if he were made of smoke. Desperate, the family sought help from a priest who scattered blessed cloves in all 4 corners of the property. The heavy footsteps stopped, but the feeling of being watched never left. The pressure in the air remained thick. The cloves could only protect the house. They couldn't protect Sonali from what was already inside her. The entity was simply waiting for her to leave the safety of the village and drive into the deep shadows of Chaambi. The morning after the mountain encounter, Sonali's family realized that medicine wouldn't help her. She was brought to a local tantric, a man who could see the 2 distinct shadows still clinging to her. The tantric identified the immediate danger, the burned, one-eyed spirit from the rearview mirror. It was a parasite, feeding on Sonali's years of suppressed trauma, trying to finally consume what was left of her soul. But he also saw something rare. The glowing child on the mountain wasn't a threat, it was a violent spiritual shield. Every time the burned man tried to take control, the child pushed back. The tantric looked at Sonali and asked the one question that could break the silence. Who is Shubham? The name acted like a key. Sonali collapsed, finally confessing the secret she had tried to erase years ago. In high school, terrified of her family's judgment, Sonali had ended a pregnancy in secret. She had chosen the name Shubham for the son she never held, thinking that by burying the name, she could bury the grief. The glowing child on the mountain road was that unfinished life. Bound to his mother by a bond that transcended the physical, the spirit of her unborn son had remained in the darkness, waiting for the moment his mother needed a protector. This also explained the physical purge Sonali experienced. The strange, jelly-like substance she vomited wasn't biological illness. It was the physical manifestation of a life that was never allowed to take form, a secret so heavy it literally had to be forced out of her body during the spiritual battle. Sonali now maintains a ritual of prayers every Tuesday in Shubham's name. It is a weekly acknowledgement of the secret she once tried to hide, and a way to honor the child spirit that continues to stand guard over her. Trauma and secrets don't just disappear. They wait in the shadows. For Sonali, the mountains are a reminder that a mother's bond can linger forever, sometimes as a burden, and sometimes as the